to open your packs up. There we go. It's just been recorded now. Thank you, Rowena. Got it. Get rid of that. Which brings me to my special guest co-host, Mr. Mike Benny. Mike joined us for the Semillon tasting we did 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago. He's a great mate of mine. We've been good mates for, I would say, 20 years ago now. Mike, I first met when he was basically a shelf stacker at Bestsellers, but since then he's gone on to much bigger and better things. Mike's a wine journalist and commentator of note, contributes to, you might need to help me here a bit, Mike, but Delicious Magazine, Halliday, Gourmet Traveller Wine, probably Wine Spectator, who knows? There's like he contributes to pretty well everything wine related and drinks related across the world. He was one of the founders of the what I'd like to describe as the Wacky Wine Lo-Fi Rootstock Festival, which kicked off, I don't know, 10 years ago, let's say. He is one of the 3 contributing editors to a highly influential wine site, a wine review and commentary site in Australia called The Wine Front, which is probably where most of you who know Mike would know him from. And most recently, co-founder and owner of now 2 wine stores in Sydney called P&V Wine Merchants. I would like to make a very warm welcome to my good mate, Mike Benny.
Thank you so much, Thommo. A delight to be here again, and wonderful to see, as always, such a resounding support for you. I got to say, I do a lot of these Zoom tastings by virtue of not being able to get around the country or around the universe as much these days, and it's such a wonderful thing that this is the most supported that I've ever seen. Same as last time, 6 to 8 weeks ago, whatever it was. An emphatic support group. And I love the fact that I love you, first of all, in a way that, transcends the 2 decades we've known each other. But the community is the greatest sort of emphatic emphasis about how much your wines resonate with people. And to see 5 pages now of people on a Zoom chat listening in is always exciting and happy for me to kind of celebrate what you do, Thommo. And I'm grateful to be here. And of course, although I'm not allowed to say it because I'm an independent communicator, but I love your wines, Thommo.
Well, mate, I've always said you were a man of impeccable taste.
I'm just trying to work out, Thommo, how do you make them so cheap?
Yeah, and let's face it, there's a lot of people who are tuning in tonight that actually are fairly partial to a Friday evening little wine tasting. And this is just, I assume, a bit of a warm-up for a little pre-dinner drink, if you like.
Indeed.
Hey, I just wanted to mention one other thing. Despite the disappointment with a few packs not being turned, not having showed up, those of you who did tune into the Semillon taste would notice a slight difference with this pack to the last. That being that no more sort of shiny cardboard, the insert, rather than the foam, which is probably not particularly environmentally friendly, has now been replaced with this cardboard insert. So, those last packs look beautiful in terms of their presentation, but I think it's a good thing that we've gone down the track of slightly more environmentally friendly. So all of that straight in the recycle bin. I will point out, and I'm assuming most people know that, but underneath the wines and underneath the little insert in the bottom of the box was a little call bag. So these were all frozen and put underneath the wines before they sent out. Most people receive their wines within 24 hours or a day or 2. Make sure you pull those out, stick them in the freezer, reuse them. They're great. Okay. I think the best place to start is let's have a quick chat about the 2019 vintage. 3rd year in a row of fairly warm, dry drought conditions. Mike, you've seen a lot of 2019s from the Hunter Valley come across your bench through various tastings, nonetheless for Winefront. Give me your thoughts on the 2019 Hunter Valley vintage.
Yeah, look, it's a great question to ask first and foremost, Thommo. I was in a place of thinking that 2018 was probably one of the best years that I'd seen in almost a decade, despite 2014 being so exceptional. And then I sort of was made to eat my words in a way, because the 2019 wines I found so accessible, so enjoyable, and yet so fine that off the back of my commentary on 2018, I almost was sort of humbled by my own profligate commentary about 2018 to find a vintage that followed that was slightly better. And what I like about 2019 is, and sort of reminiscent of 2014, is that the wines are quite fine and very detailed. And 18 had great fruit character, a bit of richness and depth, good concentration, but still true to Hunter Valley form of medium weight red wine. And then 2019 does all of that, but also trims it down with amazing tannin structure. And particularly with your wines, I've noticed that fruit purity plus also that natural tannin grip have been the characteristics. And they're things that I prize, I guess, more than anything else in wines from Hunter Valley is beautiful purple color, vibrancy of fruit in terms of perfume, an inward concentration that doesn't speak of kind of weight and texture broadening, and a kind of intensity that gives length and dimension to the wines without giving too much puppy fat or richness that doesn't speak of true Hunter Valley form. And 2019 to me is one of those vintages that it's sort of unfortunate there's been kind of a couple already in the last 10 years that are so excellent that it might get overlooked. But I reckon this is a stellar year for red wine from the Hunter Valley. And particularly with the way that you've handled the wines, and this is not a kind of pissing in pocket scenario. This is not Mike Benny being paid to be a spokesman of Thommo, but thanks for that Ferrari in my driveway. It was pretty handy. Thanks, Thommo. It was nice.
Yes, he's not getting paid.
Yeah, no, don't do it because I love Thommo. But it is this sort of elegance, resonance, and length and tension that actually puts 2019 into a bracket of red wine from the Hunter that, to my mind, is the best of the last couple of decades. And it's not because present company says that that's what's in our glasses. It's simply an observation of mine. As you know, Thommo, because I usually sleep in Thommo's spare room, I'm fed puppy kibble mostly. He doesn't actually make nice food from anything. He just says, come up here and do your job, mate. But the 2019 vintage, to witness it firsthand, I kept just saying, Thommo, like, I don't know what you've done here, but you sort of dialed back on anything that resembles winemaking seasoning, and given the fruit the major opportunity to be the superstar here. And it was really hard to try and finesse my notes after I tasted through the range to work out which wines were better than the others, because they were all super, super pure, excellent, tannin driven and fine. And I really love that about the wines. And that's the sort of Hunter reds, Shiraz, that I love the most. The ones that have this clarity, almost like a bell ring of pure fruit with a little bit of Hunter Valley savoriness, spice, but tannin structure. And this is the currency of this suite of wines here, Thommo. That to me is the essence of what's happened in 2019 for your wines. And I think actually broader in the Hunter Valley. I don't mean to diminish the conversation this evening about Thomas wines, but across the valley, I've seen a really amazing coherency of this concept of fresh fruit, tannin structure, tension, length. And to me, it's a really brilliant year. Fair enough?
Nicely said, mate. I entirely agree. It's interesting. There was a lot of chat about the vintage of the century, whatever, of 2014, the best in 65. And, whilst those wines are fantastic, I think part of that commentary was we were so excited about the 2014s because we hadn't seen a vintage like that for so long. And then 3 years later, we hit 2017, which were pretty bloody good wines.
Yeah, that's right.
And in fact, 2018 and 2019. And clearly, the drought and lower yields have a significant impact on ripeness, and there's no issues from a vineyard point of view on having to worry about any disease, downy mildew, botrytis, any of those sort of things. It was our picking decisions were totally focused on what was happening in the vineyard, as against some, the more challenging seasons. We've got one eye in the vineyard and one eye in the sky. But what I will say is there's the 17, 18, 19, that trio of really awesome vintages we've had. 19 kind of sits out of the group, to my mind, because the 17s and 18s, they were quite muscular in their weight and their structure, as the 19s, by contrast, have whilst they're ripe, and all of these wines, apart from the Deja Vu, which we'll taste first, which is purposely a bit lower, but all of these wines sort of sit in that 13.5% to 14% alcohol mark. They're fruit ripe, but stylistically, they've got a more gentle feel than the 17s and 18s that had that sort of more muscular.
Do you reckon, Thommo, as well, that like with those riper years often suit you and your style because you're quite judicious in making sure that your wines are medium bodied and all that sort of stuff. But 19 kind of gifted it to you without even trying. And it feels like as well that some of the need for extra extraction or extra oak presence has been pulled back by you a bit as well to create just like a greater finesse. It's almost like I don't want to say easier because every year is difficult in terms of your winemaking across all the different vineyards you work with. But it feels like there was a bit more like, okay, yeah, this is more Thommo's own. I'm going for that really quintessential, almost dictionary definition of Hunter Valley wine, but from great vineyards, and it's sort of all worked out, not more effortlessly, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's
and absolutely, and I guess when I look at my brand in the landscape of Hunter Valley producers, I think it's fair to say, and I think to an extent this is why we have the certain people that our members, various people come back to us each year. It's fair to say that the Thomas house style is, we speak of medium-bodied Hunter Valley Shiraz. That's a spectrum, and I guess in the greater landscape of Hunter producers, our wines are slightly in the fuller end of that medium-bodied spectrum. And then, as you say, the 2019 sort of gifted us this this more sort of gentle feel, slightly more elegantly structured wines within that medium-bodied frame, but they've still got that inherent underlying ripeness that we know and love with great vintages in the Hunter Valley.
Truth. Now, I might just chuck in here, Thommo, because we could wax lyrical ad nauseum, but is everyone got some wine in their glasses? Because that's really important, because Thommo and I are way more interesting if you have a bit of wine in your glass. And definitely if you sit through a couple of things without finishing your glasses. Actually, somebody just sculled a glass there. That looked like Candice and Ben. Candice just necked her glass. That's not what we meant to do, Candice. You meant to be a little more kind with your glass. But anyway, that's fine. I'm kind of a supporter of that. But if you've got some wine in your glass, make sure you've got it in there just so we make a more gentle approach to a wine conversation. I guess one other thing I wanted to ask you, Thommo, is how's the connection to the vineyards going? How's that kind of currency of those places that you work with? And in 2019, did you feel like everything came on deck as you wanted to? And are all the vineyards firing, or is anything, if you want to be candid, is anything underperforming? And you had to kind of work a bit harder at your plots that you were working with, or is generally everything just working perfectly well with all the vineyards you're working with?
Well, as you know, the only vineyard that we actually own is the Braymore Vineyard, Semillon. So all of these reds come from vineyards where I've been fortunate enough to over the years foster relationships with independent growers of various vineyards around the Hunter Valley, and these are guys that grow, certainly in my opinion, and just not mine, of course, some of the best quality Shiraz in the Hunter Valley. And it's been a long sort of slow burn over the last 20 years, and our range now, each vintage we bottle, in theory, 9 different labels of Shiraz. And I guess my primary focus over the last, in growing that range over the last 20 years, is finding vineyards that are of a quality level that suits what we're trying to do. But I guess primarily they need, the vineyards we deal with, they need to have their own sort of unique personality and their own stamp. Again, harking back to that stylistic diversity. To bottle a single vineyard wine, it needs to have its own unique signature within the range that makes it distinctly different to the other wines to create that level of interest. In terms of how they're all going really well. And to be honest with you, whilst I'm more intimately involved in the day-to-day goings on in the vineyards through the growing season, these vineyards are all owned and operated by independent growers who have vast amount of experience with their own plots. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't need me to come in and tell them how to suck eggs and how to prune and that sort of thing. We do, with a lot of the vineyards, go through do a bit of fruit thinning around Christmas, New Year, when we're about halfway through veraison, to make sure that the crop levels at a level that's low enough that we're going to get them ripe and get that concentration we're looking for. But mate, we're going to go through the range here tonight, and that stylistic diversity is so profound in a year like this, and I could not be happier with all the relationships I've built up and all these vineyards and all these wines. Now, I've just got one question for you before we move on. Who's that creepy uncle sitting behind you in the background?
Hello, everybody.
Look, I'm surprisingly famous and require a bodyguard at all times. I don't know if you've ever seen things like Get Shorty, where celebrities overseas have somebody who follows them around to make sure that people don't talk to me when I find it inappropriate or approach me for autographs or similar. So I have Andrew, the Bulldog Woodforth here.
Hi, Woody.
To make sure
it's going to stick.
Yeah. Now, Andrew is a really great mate of mine, and obviously somebody Thommo, through 20 years of wine as well. And Andrew's a ex-wine merchant and current sort of wine wheeler and dealer who has been working with me for a long time. I'm sorry we didn't introduce Andrew. He's a nice spectre here. But he happened to drop by my house tonight. I said, look, stick around when I do my introduction for Thommo's wines, and we've shared a little glass here together. We obviously are not sticking around long this evening, but
for reasons we have not disclosed just yet.
Yeah, look, I thought it'd be a nice segue, Thommo, for me to take my leave as you start talking about the 3 wines in front of you. Having just said that you've described the relationship with the growers, it's now your turn to describe each wine for your guests here this evening. And with that, I'm bowing out this evening, but we'll be back next Wednesday for a more extensive look into the wines. Rowena and Thommo, thank you so much for having me. It's all right if I disappear now?
So, sorry, Mike, just to explain, of the 200-odd 2019 Shiraz packs we sent out, you were unfortunately one of the 3 or 4 that we know of that hasn't quite got there on time. Now, in Toll Express's defence, Mike is currently sitting in the middle of a national forest on a river somewhere that, I'd be hard-pressed finding it myself, let alone some delivery driver. But, unfortunately, Mike didn't get his packs in time. And whilst I'm pretty sure you've already seen all these wines.
I've seen all the wines, yeah. I've got notes on all of them. I just felt it would be disingenuous to sit in front of you with my glass of Thomas Wine's Kiss Shiraz from 2017 that I've saved. Oh, how good's that? Got any in your cellar? Nice drink. Now, I thought it'd be disingenuous to continue my conversation without the tasting pack in front of me, which is a bit of a shame. But as Thommo explained, and not to make or beleaguer the point, I'm in a 2-street village in the middle of a national park on a river in the middle of nowhere, and Toll unfortunately didn't get here today. Forgive me, everyone.
That's okay, Mike. I guess people are just going to have to put up with my ugly dial and my commentary, but mate, hopefully the LNA vertical pack turns up Monday, Tuesday in time for Wednesday, and we can do it all again next week.
Indeed.
Mate, love your guts. Thank you so much for coming on board and getting the ball rolling. Sorry the packs didn't turn up, but I still, I hope you still love us. And
love you all very much, and love the audience, and want to thank people for investing their time and energy in such a beautiful community to be able to do something like this on a Friday for Thommo, my mate. It's really emphatically such a brilliant thing that so many of you are interested in such a great producer. And thanks for supporting somebody so independent and fiercely unique as well. Super cool.
Good on you, bud. See you next week.
Oh, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Cheers. Bye. Righto. Let's taste some wine. Ro, it's hard for me to do all of this and keep my eye on the comments section. So can you just give me a shout out if there's anything, questions, comments that are relevant to what I'm talking about at the time. So, excuse me. Certainly with these first 3 wines, I've poured all 3 out together, and we've been going now for 30 minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you aren't already onto your 3rd wine. But I think this is a really interesting compare and contrast because these. So these 3 wines are all line priced at full retail, $35 a bottle. So in my left-hand glass, I have Deja Vu. My middle glass, I have the Sweetwater, and the right-hand glass, I have the Coat. And there's a reason for that is, and we present these 3 wines side by side when visitors come to our cellar door. And to my mind, this is actually one of the most interesting parts of the whole tasting, because here we have 3 wines that are line priced. To my mind, these 3 wines are equal in terms of their quality. But what I love about this little trio is that when we talk about Shiraz being Hunter Shiraz being medium bodied, well, what is medium bodied? And really, it's a spectrum. And what this little tasting, this little trio, clearly demonstrates is the full breadth of that medium-bodied spectrum. So, look, I kind of like to sort of look all 3 at one time, but let's just start and have a chat about them one by one. So, starting with the Deja Vu. Those of you who tuned in with Thomas Wines, particularly those who have been to Cellar Door, we love talking about the soils, and one of the sort of take-home messages we give to people when they come to visit the cellar door is that it is a bit of a generalisation, but generally speaking, in the Hunter, the whites, particularly Semillon, they tend to grow best for that more classic style on the lighter sandy loam alluvial flats, and then the reds on the darker, heavier soils around the valley. The Hunter Valley is a bit of a patchwork quilt of hundreds of different soil types, and it can change within sort of 100 metres, even within a block sometimes. But generally speaking, whites, lighter soils, reds, heavier soils. There's always exceptions to that rule, and those of you who know our wines will know that the Fort Semillon comes from Addit Broke, the Fort Hill Semillon, and that's a Semillon grown on quite dark red volcanic soil, produces a more generous, riper, slightly gentler acid, more contemporary style of Hunter Semillon compared to a more classic Oakey Creek and Braymore. Deja Vu is the exception to the rule in our reds, in that this little block, 2-acre block of Shiraz, is grown on Trudy Trevina's property, which is literally over the fence from the Bravemore Vineyard. So this is sitting on that beautiful strip of that ancient watercourse that runs along Hermitage Road, which Bravemore sits right in the middle of. This ancient watercourse has been silted up with this beautiful Semillon country sandy loam soil over the millennia. That whole strip's pretty well planted Semillon, and there's just one little block of Shiraz, which happens to be over the fence, my neighbour, Trudy Trevina's block, on Hermitage Road, and that is what interests me about this fruit. What happens with Shiraz when it's grown on what's considered Semillon country? And the Deja Vu has always been quite intentionally that lighter, pretty perfume style. We're not going for that extra level of ripeness in this wine. It's definitely in the red fruit spectrum. This wine is the one that we actually co-ferment with a splash of Semillon verjuice each vintage, and the amount of verjuice that we've co-fermented with has ranged from about 3% to 15%. And I had to go and look up today just to make sure, but the 19 is 8.5% Semillon. So it's below 15%. It doesn't need to be declared on the label, but we always talk about it because that Semillon verjuice just adds a level of, well, obviously the acidity is what we're mainly interested in, but it also adds a sort of aromatic brightness and vibrancy to the wine. And Deja Vu, as the name suggests, you know, I've seen this before. This, I guess, is my tribute to traditional Hunter River Burgundy, and it harks back to when the verjuice thing came to me with things that Murray Tyrrell used to say when I was a rookie winemaker back in the day. They used to add some white hermitage, which is Trebbiano, late ripening, white variety, higher acid. They used to add that to their red hermitage just to balance the acidity and the pH out and give the wine a bit more focus. And that's where it came from. The other difference here compared to all my other wines is that it's matured exclusively in older barrels, so 5-6-year-old hogsheads, because clearly here I want that lighter, pretty perfume fruit to be the focus and not the oak. We want the benefit of the maturation in the oak without any oak impacting the wine. So, you know, I guess it's our Shiraz for Pinot lovers. It's nothing like Pinot, but certainly in our range, it really is a bit of an outlier in terms, certainly in its weight. And this one is definitely very much in the lighter end of that medium-bodied spectrum. On to the second wine. The Sweetwater Shiraz. This is, I've got to say, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, probably the most popular wine in Celador. This vineyard is about 10 minutes north of here. I'm sitting in Celador at the moment, up in the Belford sub-region. One of the youngest vineyards that we deal with across both Semillon and Shiraz, planted in the late 90s. And this little block it's got this beautiful red-brown loamy soil, but the key with the Belford sub-region, there's a lot of limestone up there. And to that extent, there's a lot of dams up there that leak because of the limestone that's underneath. And I still believe that it's the limestone underneath the topsoil of this vineyard that gives it its very distinctive Sweetwater vineyard character. And every year, particularly as a young wine, when it's first pressed off the skins at the end of fermentation and first goes to barrel, it's really quite heady in these beautiful floral, violet and potpourri characters, and amongst all those beautiful red and blue fruits. An absolute favourite of mine. It's a great vineyard. It's been a lot of fun making this over the last 15 odd years. And in terms of this little trio, this wine is to my mind, if you had to define medium-bodied Shiraz, this wine sits smack bang in the middle of that medium-bodied spectrum.
So Ron Mason is asking, sandy soils normally translate to finer tannins in red. Is that a fair comment?
That is a fair comment. Sorry, who was that? Ron Masson?
Yeah.
His question was, and I'm sure everyone can read this, red wines grown in the sandy soil translate to finer tannins. Absolutely correct, and you can see that in that wine. And I will add to that too, that red wine in the Hunter Shiraz, particularly grown on sandy soils, is uncommon. It's most of the reds in the Hunter are grown on the heavier, darker soil. So I think you can certainly see it in that wine. So yes, Ron, the short answer is yes, you're absolutely correct. So Sweetwater, and then last but not least in this little trio is the Coat, a relatively new single vineyard Shiraz to our range. This vineyard is actually about 10 minutes south of here, and it's got a bit more altitude than the other ones here. It's actually perched on one of the ridges that run off that beautiful Broken Bat Range here in the Hunter Valley. It sits about 190 metres, which is fairly high for the Hunter. Originally planted in the 1860s, this property by the Wilkinson family. In fact, those of you who've been to the Audrey Wilkinson cellar door, amazing views, great wines too. This vineyard is on the next ridge to the south, and in fact, on the top of that ridge, we look down over the top of the Audrey Wilkinson cellar doors. So for those of you who've been to Audrey Wilkinson, you can imagine what sort of views we've got up from there. But that obviously has nothing to do with the wine quality. Unfortunately, the vineyard was pulled out at some stage through the Great Depression or through one of the world wars. And then it was replanted in 1971. So that's exactly 50 years this year, isn't it? Yes, I've just done my maths. Yeah. With 7 acres of dry grown Shiraz. And it's quite a famous property, and the 7 acres that was planted in 71 has been highly sought after over the years. I was fortunate that a friend of mine, in fact, a wine enthusiast, bought the block about 6 years ago, and he loved my wines and wanted to see his fruit go to a good home. So he came to me and asked if I'd be interested in taking the fruit and making some wine under our label for it. And of course I said yes, and the rest is history. And what I love about this wine is, whereas with the Sweetwater, it's very bright in its red and blue fruits and that sort of underlying floral complexity. The Coat's got some more left field characters going with it. It's a little more earthy. It's got some spice. It's got Turkish delight. It's got a more chewy tannin structure. It's
a little higher acidity, has been asked.
A little higher acidity. I don't think any, not significantly higher. It's certainly pronounced, but it's got a chewiness to it. It's got those lovely Turkish delight. It's got that spice. It's this beautiful chocolatey fossil laden soil on the deep slope, dry grown, and certainly in this trio, to my mind, that wine is the one that certainly sits in the fuller end of that medium-bodied spectrum. Delicious. It's hard to pick a favorite because they are so distinctively different. I hope a lot of you have got your 3 glasses out, so you're doing the same thing, looking at these wines side by side. And I'd be interested to know, by way of poll, where your favourite lies within those 3 wines: Deja Vu, Sweetwater, or Coat, or can't decide, love them all. Coat Sweetwater, Coat's hand down. I can see actually these comments coming up now.
Yeah.
Sweetwater,
Brooke
Sweetwater,
Pine, Garage from there.
Deja Vu, Coat. I'm glad there's a few there on the Deja Vu. It's kind of, Deja Vu is one of those wines that's easy to sort of to look past when you've got these slightly fuller wines alongside it. Tim Waggett's on Sweetwater. Sweetwater's looks to be the overwhelming favourite there. Not overwhelming, but Sweetwater now, Coat de Cellar.
Real mix.
Good mix, yeah. That's awesome. That's great feedback. I think one of the take-home things here is that there's no right or wrong answer to that question, because everyone, obviously these three wines are distinctly different, and also is everyone's taste, and everyone has their own sort of personal preference and their own taste, and it's nice to see a bit of love shared across all three of those wines. So that's great. I'm going to put those to one side, and I'm going to get Ro to come down and just talk about our, what have we got coming up?
The next three wines.
Yeah. No, as in coming up with the LNA packs, and just make sure they're all out, because I've just got to go and check on something.
Hi everyone, just a quick check-in. Those of you doing the LNA tasting next week, you'll have received your email and the packs should be on their way. If it's getting towards, maybe late Monday, Tuesday morning, and you haven't received them yet, yes, he has gone to the toilet. Please let me know so I can try and start and follow them through with a day or so's grace to see what we can do. We can't always change freight at the moment, but we do our best. So please let us know. It should be a good tasting. It's so great to see everyone. It's really good having the pictures on this time. We didn't last time, and it's really great to see. I love some of the setups there. I can see tables with amazing views behind them, and couples enjoying things together, people just taking it in on their own. It's really great to see. So I hope you're enjoying it. Oh, lots of people receiving their LNA, which is absolutely awesome. Hopefully, oh, here he comes. He's coming back again, so you don't have to put up with me for too long. But you should have ready in your glass next the Dam Block and LNA and Kiss. So Thommo's going to talk you through those next.
Thanks, Ro. Yes. I keep forgetting to have a pee before I start. Done those. Okay. These three wines don't have quite the direct comparison that the last three did in terms of being line priced. There are a couple of interesting comparisons that we can have a chat about, but I'm going to pour all three side by side.
While you're doing that, Lily's asking which of the last three would age best.
So I'm not sure if you can hear Ro giving me these questions. Lily has asked which of the last three wines will age best. It's kind of hard to ask. I think it's definitely out of Sweetwater and Coat. I think both of those wines are a good 5 to 10 year proposition, possibly longer. And if I had to be a betting man, which is the one that's going to sell the longest out of those three, I would say Coat. But again, it all depends on how you like your wine. It's amazing. Some people don't like aged wine at all. They prefer even red wine in the freshness and vibrancy of its youth, when it's got those lovely primary red and blue fruit characters. Show them something with some beautiful secondary bottle aged characters, earth and spice, and beautifully complex and softened tannins. They don't get it. So it really is a personal decision how long you sell your wine. So how long is wine going to last? Well, it really depends on your own personal preference, but both Sweetwater and Cote, to my mind, almost even in the more challenging years, are a good 5 to 10 plus year proposition. So if one of those was your favourite, then you take your pick. It's put it away as long as you like. Okay, let's talk about Dan Block. What's the oldest Sweetwater you've tried? I'm not sure is that to me or to the group? From Leone. The oldest, look, just a little backstory on the Sweetwater Vineyard. The vineyard was planted in 98 by a guy called Duncan Hardy, who developed that property on Sweetwater Road, built this amazing castle and planted this amazing 25-acre block of Shiraz. He came to me. I was doing a lot of contract winemaking in those days, and he came to me to ask if I would make some wine for him. We only made a small amount for Duncan each year. He had some Cabernet there as well. So the first vintage I made from that vineyard was 98. So it was probably 01, or 01 was a pretty tough year, maybe 02. And even in those early days, the vineyard just wanted to pump out a lot of fruit in those days. So we had to do some massive thinning to make sure we got the fruit right. But it was about, I know it was 2005 actually. And the wine that we made for Duncan in 2005, and 05 was a pretty amazing year in the Hunter, again, hot and dry and droughty, but it was different to the previous few years that we'd made from him. And was that was it the vintage? Did we just nail the picking just in that perfect zone? Or was that the year the roots just started to dip their toes into the limestone? I like that story. I can't say whether it's actually factually correct or not, but certainly the 05 was pretty amazing. And it was about that stage I was looking at adding another single vineyard wine to my range, and there was some surplus fruit there was available. I was helping Duncan sell the surplus fruit to other producers years before that. And so the first Sweetwater Shiraz under the Thomas Wines label, my own label, was 2006, so 15 years ago now. But yeah, 02, I'm pretty sure, was the first vintage. Right. Dan Block Shiraz. And before I do this, I'm sorry, I completely forgot that I had props. And I hope you can see this. But that's the three soils from the first three wines we tasted. So this one here, this was my left to right. I'm not sure if is it appearing left to right? Other way around, left to right. Is that right now?
Yeah.
The Deja Vu, and those of you know Braymore will see a very distinct similarity there, because this vineyard is literally just over the fence. Our neighbour's property, Braymore Simeon. So deep sandy soil, and then you've got that lovely sort of red loamy soil. There's flecks of ironstone on the surface and throughout of the Sweetwater Vineyard, the middle one, and then the coat is this beautiful chocolatey fossil-laden soil up there on the ridge. So it kind of, it's the soil isn't the be-all and end-all. There's lots and lots of other factors that affect quality of grapes, but one thing is constant over forever, really, is the soil that the roots have, the vines have their roots embedded in. So it kind of, I guess, makes a bit of sense, doesn't it? That why those three wines are going to taste a bit different when they're planted in such distinctly different soils. So pretty cool. Dan Block is here. In fact, I had the Dan Block instead of Sweetwater there, but those are fairly similar. Again, reddish, loamy soil. And what I love about the Dan Block And for those of you who know these wines will know that the dam block is on the same property as the old vine block that we take for our Kiss Shiraz. And it's literally, there's a little ridge line, which is dammed up. And on the other side of the dam, hence the dam block, is where we source a little 2-acre block that we source this wine. I've been taking this block for years and years, and to be honest with you, it kind of has always just stood in the shadows of the old vines that we take for Kiss, and it's been an awesome component of quite often for LNA, and the balance is honestly has gone to Synergy Shiraz or the Hunter component of 2 of a kind Shiraz. But then in 2015, which was a relatively challenging vintage here in the Hunter Valley, the dam block just stood out. It just held its own, and it just made sense to start bottling this little block. It's only 2 acres as a single vineyard wine. And look, to my mind, in comparison to Kiss, it doesn't hold entirely true in 2019, but generally in terms of Kiss, you can tell the vines are slightly younger. Now, those vines that we source Kiss from are 50 years old. The dam block was planted about 20 years later. They're not exactly young vines at 30 odd years old, but it just it always has this extra level of opulence and lift and juby, vibrant primary fruit that really jumps out of the glass. It's like, look at me, whereas Kiss, and you'll see when we get to it, is a little more sort of closed and inward focused and tightly structured and concentrated. This is a little more open, a little more opulent, and I guess to a certain extent a little more approachable. The 19, I love this one, and it really stands out in this whole range to me this year, because whilst it's not as juby as we have come to expect dam block to be, it has this beautiful, bright, juicy, vibrant perfume. It's just a beautiful, pretty wine. And I think, when we were talking, discussing the vintage with Mike before, and we're talking about how it sort of really hits that medium-bodied zone, right in the zone, and is a more gentle feel, this wine really hits that, drives that home as what the 2019 vintage is all about. It's red, it's blue, it's fruit, so lifted, so fragrant, so primary and bright, and then just a juicy, perfectly medium-bodied palate, clean as a whistle.
Mark Davis says approachable but serious.
Approachable but serious for Mark. Yeah, I agree. This is secretly one of my favourite wines of the vintage because it is an outlier. I believe this has got the legs to go a fair way in the cellar if that's your thing. It's not everyone's thing. But it doesn't quite have the weight of some of the other wines, but just its structural beauty and its sort of internal complexity and brightness and prettiness and perfume. As a drink right now, and it's only a couple of years old, this is one of my favourite wines in the whole range.
Me too.
Kathy's dam block, great structure. I can see these comments coming through if I watch them.
Somebody was asking me how deep do the roots go?
The question has come through by unknown. There's 2 in the waiting room, 2 row. How deep the roots go? It depends on the age of the vines and the soil. The lighter the soil, the sandy soil, the easier it is for the roots to get down. It really depends on whether the vine has supplementary irrigation available or not as to how deep those roots will go, because if they have the irrigation applied to the vineyard, they don't have to quite go as deep to search for moisture as as the dry grain vineyards do. And then obviously in the heavier soils, it's harder for those roots to get down as deep as perhaps they like. And it can take years and years to get to a certain depth. But look, the short answer is a lot of the roots that do the work for the vine are in the first 500 mils of soil. It's the really old vineyards, and particularly the dry grain ones, that will have much deeper roots, and they can go down as far as a couple of metres. But it really does depend on site, vine age, and soil. Have that answered the question? Hey, Rowena, unmute yourself. There's a bit of echo when you come through on those mic. Oh, unmute or unmute? I don't know. Okay, Elena. Now, I know a few of you have also put your hand up to come back next week and do the vertical. Mclaren Shiraz. This is obviously the youngest wine in that group. We go back to the very first vintage of Mclaren, which is 2011. And that's going to be a lot of fun, but I really am excited to put the 2019 up here. Brody, hello, welcome. Because whilst the 6 wines we've presented here, we've we talk about a top end as being, all the great single vineyard hunter wines. This wine's a bit of an outlier in that it's not single vineyard, rather going back to the very start, well, certainly the second vintage of LLA, it's become it's a winemaker's wine. This is a barrel selected blend across all the various single vineyard parcels that we have in the cellar each year. The composition, the vineyard composition of this wine will change every year. It mostly always will have some Kiss and invariably has some Sweetwater in there, but the percentages and then the other vineyards that come in and out will change year in, year out, depending on how the wines look. So with this wine, I love making this wine because here we get to play, and we can be doing this over a matter of days, weeks, months. I start thinking about LLA at the end of my, 12 months before this wine goes to bottle, based on knowing how all the various single vineyard parcels we have look, the barrels that I have those various parcels in, because here we are looking at the newer barrels in each of the parcels, not necessarily all brand new, but some brand new ones, some first use, second use barrels. It really is focusing on the new barrels. So we need to hone in on those ones that've got the level of juicy fruit and weight to be able to handle that slightly higher, slightly more elevated level of oak. And look, it varies year to year. I might have 20 or 30 barrels that we're focusing on, and we'll have samples of all of those barrels out on the bench, and we're just playing around and we're just looking at them and we're playing with different combinations, and it's a bit like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and however long it takes, eventually you finally put that last piece into place, and the wine, the blend that we've done on the bench is perfectly round, it's complete, it's juicy, it's everything we're looking for. And then based on what that final bench blend is, we go out to the winery, we pull all those various barrels out, and we physically blend those together in the winery. And so it's fun, From a winemaking point of view, we look at the Deja Vu, the Sweetwater, the Cote, the Dan Block, the Kiss. At the end of the day, I really don't want to wave too much of a winemaker's wand over those wines, because whilst we're going to see a house style across the whole range, really what I want to shine through amongst these wines is the personality of the vineyard, and that's what's important. That distinctive difference needs to come from the style and the personality of the vineyard. Here with LNA, I get to take a little bit, it's a bit like creating a monster, I suppose. I get to take a little bit of the personality of each of these parcels and bring them together in just the right proportion to create a wine that is LNA. And yes, because we're focusing on the newer barrels each year, It is a little bit punchy and a little overt, particularly when it first goes to bottle in the premium French oak department. That is the style of Ellenae. And, you know, over the years, we have noticed when it first goes to bottle, and in the wine's defence and my own defence, the wines aren't released until at least 10 months after they're bottled. So the wine has time to settle down, and we do find over time that, you know, the oak sort of melds into the fruit, and you know, I remember this wine, and every year of Ellenae, when it first went to bottle, it's like, oh, you know, that oak, beautiful oak, but it's a little edgy. But I look at this now, and to my mind, that beautiful French oak has just added to the structural completeness and definition of that wine. It's not really overt. You can see it's there. And it adds to the structural integrity of the wine, but it doesn't really stick out as being particularly oaky.
Thommo, oh, can't do that. Sorry.
You need to mute. There we go.
I was trying to do what's not. Somebody's asking, is it all French oak, and is there some old and some new?
So the question is it all French oak that we use, and is some old, some new? Yes, it is all French oak. Back in the early mid noughties, I did dabble in a little bit of American oak, and I think that's because you can take the boy out of Mclaren Vale, but you can't take the Mclaren Vale out of the boy. But you know, the American oak can add a bit of interest to Hunter Shiraz, but our medium-bodied, savoury, textured, spicy style of Hunter Shiraz is much more suited to French oak. So these days, well, for the last at least 10 years, I've been 100% French oak. One thing that I have done, it was about 10 years ago, I moved my barrel purchases from barriques, which were 225 litre, to hogsheads, which are 300 litres, so slightly larger format. And I guess in effect, to explain what that does is you have a larger volume to surface area ratio. So the impact of your oak is slightly diminished, which is what I wanted. Those of you who have been drinking my wines for, you know, even up to 20 years will have seen a slow progression of stylistic change over the years. And I guess for those of you who haven't, to summarize that, it would be like back in the early days, I was really pushing boundaries, trying to produce the biggest, boldest Hunter Shiraz I could. But over the years, you know, lots of oak, very, very ripe fruit, working the fermentation really hard. But whereas over the years, and particularly for the last 5 or 10 years, I've taken a bit more of a hands-off approach. So less new oak, larger format new oak, not pushing quite as hard in the vineyard to get them sort of super ripe, much more gentle approach to our fermentation and skins, cap management, in an effort to produce a style, I guess, that's more true to the Hunter Valley, but also so that again, the individual personalities of the vineyards can speak through. So yes, you're going to see a house style, because we like what we do, and so do most of you. But it's really important that underneath that house style, we see the personality of these wines shine through. So sorry, this long-winded way of saying yes, 100% premium French oak. You get what you pay for to a certain extent with oak purchases, and I buy all of my wines from what I consider to be the best coopers, Tonnelleries in France. Ellenae is certainly a higher proportion of newer oak than all of the other wines, but again, that is the style of Ellenae. In all of the other wines, you know, back in the early noughties, I would have been maybe 50% new oak, and the other 50% is 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 and 5 year old barrels. Now, even Kiss Shiraz in a year like 18, which I would consider to be one of the, you know, the ripest and most muscular styles of Kiss Shiraz in my modern style, would be 25-30% at the most new oak, brand new oak. So that's LNA.
Make my comment. Ron Masson says, Ron Masson saying it's settling down, the oak is settling down and filled out a bit more since the Kiss vertical tasting before lockdown. Looks great. I can see why it won those awards.
Right, yeah. So Ron was who knows the wine, has also sort of confirmed that as time goes by, that oak sort of folds into the fruit and becomes less of a feature of the wine. And look, to my wine, that's I love that wine where it sits right now. I don't like to skite too much, but the Hunter Valley Wine Show last year, this year's Hunter Show has been pushed back, obviously, for COVID, and hopefully we're going to be able to run it in a couple of weeks. But the 2020 Hunter Valley Wine Show, one of the most highly prized trophies at the Hunter Valley Wine Show each year is the best one-year-old Shiraz. So these are wines that people have really sort of recently put to bottle and are going to be released in the next 6 or 12 months or so. There was 4 golds in the class. Brokenwood got 3 of them, including the 19 Graveyard, and we got the other one with 19 LNA. The judges had to decide which was the top gold of those 4 golds in the class for the trophy. And all I can say is thank you very much. Cheers. Judge the best Shiraz, Hunter Valley Shiraz out of the 2019 vintage of the wine show last year. So that was a bit of a thrill. That was great. We don't like to dwell on awards too much, but it was a fantastic award to win, and well judged, I say, well judged. Last but not least, no comments on. We can go back and have some questions at the end. Okay, we've got some. Apparently, we've got some more generic, overarching questions, which we'll come back to at the end before we sign off. But last but not least, 2019 Kiss. Of course, it's my sentimental favourite. This is has been our flagship single vineyard Shiraz since 2001. And every year, this block never ceases to amaze me. The vineyard's not that much to look at. You know, it's from one's point of view, it's beautiful, but it's, you know, it's not in a particularly picturesque location. It's not beautiful, but these vines, they were planted in 69, so just over 50 years old. They just produce this fruit that, you know, it embodies what top shelf Hunter Shiraz is all about. And, you know, I look at some of the other wines, you know, Danblock, Sweetwater Coat. Kiss isn't always the biggest wine in the lineup. And, you know, that's, I guess, testament to the Hunter Valley is and producers in the Hunter Valley who recognise that biggest isn't necessarily best. I can guarantee those of you who've been to the Barossa, for example, and gone to a producer that has a range of Shiraz, in terms of their price structure, they'll have, you know, 25, 35, 65, 95, 150 or whatever. And I can guarantee as you go up the price scale, they just get bigger and bigger and more alcoholic and bolder and bolder. And you know, that's great. Let them do what they want. But, you know, weight isn't it. Weight isn't the be all and end all. And I think that's that's what has sort of set Kiss apart from the other wines in our range, set it above the other wines in our range and above a lot of the other wines produced in the area, is that it's wines like this that clearly demonstrate that you can have intensity and concentration within a medium weight frame. It's not all about extract and alcohol and power. It's about internal structural beauty and complexity and integrity. And that's what this wine has in spades. And I love it. I love it. This wine, we don't talk about, you know, the wine shows and that sort of thing too much, but, you know, we've had some good success with these, and this won a gold medal on its first showing at the New South Wales Wine Awards last year. As a result of that, it got invited to something that's called the WineWise Championship, which is a big tasting in Canberra that happens each year, where producers large and small across the whole country are invited to exhibit wines that have won a gold medal in certain shows that meet their criteria. So we put the 19 Kiss in, and it went on to win the trophy against large companies, small companies right across Australia for best young Shiraz at the WineWise Championship last year. So I don't know, hard to reconcile, hard to work out whether winning the best 19 Shiraz at your local show or winning the best young Shiraz across the whole country is which one I'm more thrilled about. I can't decide. I love them both, as I do love both wines, and I hope you do too. There is a bit of a price jump when you get to Kiss, and you know, it's interesting that the dam block, which is just across the ridge line on the other side of the dam, and Kiss, I see similar fruit cues between these wines. They've both got that lovely lifted, you know, red and blue fruit and that sort of pedigree, sort of al dente tannin thing going on. But if you've still got some in your glass, I'd suggest you taste those two side by side, because whilst I love the dam block, and it is, you know, a beautifully open and delicious and you know, and it's like a puppy. You know, what's not to love about that wine? Kiss, when you go to Kiss after the dam block, you just see that it just has that extra sort of level of inward focused intensity and concentration. And that's what makes the wine delicious to drink now as a youngster, but it's that tension, that inward focused concentration that's slowly going to unwind over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years that gives this wine, out of my whole range. And for those of you, whoever, I'm sorry, I can't remember who asked the question, which is going to be the longest living out of the Sweetwater and Coat, I can guarantee this thing will still be motoring past those two when they hit their peak.
We have some people that have a problem because the issue with Kiss is we can never not drink it to age it.
Yeah, sorry, the question, sorry, the comment was the problem with Kiss is they is a matter of, it's a willpower thing, really, isn't it? Yeah, it's sitting in a cellar, and you know you probably should hold on to a few bottles, but what the hey, let's crack it and have a go. I hope you really enjoy. Like, to my mind, this is, particularly in the last 3 years, we've had 17, 18, 19. These are long-term cellaring prospects. Not that I'm suggesting you have to do that. Again, it comes down to your personal preference. But it certainly is hard to resist drinking these wines sometimes, because they are so delicious as youngsters as well.
I've got a few people saying they've got 04s, 06s. Somebody's got an 06, wants to know how long before they should scoff the rest.
People can't hear you, so okay. So there's some questions on some back vintage stuff. I'm actually going to get this chat room open a little bit so I can see some of it. Here we go. Cara and Michelle have been drinking Kiss since 04. Oh, we just lost it.
Thommo, we have a few 206 kits left. Had one about 2 months ago. It's superb. How long should we wait before stocking the rest?
Look, to my mind, it's interesting. Both Kiss and Braymore, to my mind, really start if you like something with some bottle age and that extra level of complexity. They really, both wines by chance, and they're both planted about the same time. They both hit the straps at about 10 years. If you like that age style, they start hitting their strap at 10 years. The best vintages in both years are 20 plus year propositions, and I'd like to say cellared well wines like 17, 18, 19 Kiss cellared well. I've been fortunate enough to have tasted more than my fair share of Lindy 65s in my time here in the Hunter Valley. And, we're just gobsmacked by tasting those wines. They have such an aura about them and a well-documented history of being one of the finest examples of Shiraz produced in the Hunter Valley ever. And I don't know, I would have loved to see those wines as youngsters. Like, how great would it have been to see the 65s as 2 or 3 year old wines, just to see how different they are to these. But, I like to think, and I might be delusional, but I like to think that, in 20, 30, 40 years' time, sort of beyond my time on this earth, that people will be opening well-cellared examples of the 17s, the 18s and the 19s and the 14s, obviously, and holding them in the same reverence as we do when we have the rare these days opportunity to taste the 65s now. So that's a very long-winded way of answering the questions about some back vintage bits and pieces that people have got. But we've actually been using the 04 Kiss for a couple of our members events over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, I'm down to very low quantities now, so we've had to stop that. Anyone that's got any 01 or 02, I would suggest now at about 20 years old, and they were slightly more, particularly 01, more challenging season. I would suggest that perhaps now would be the time, if you have any of those left, to open them up. But anything from 03 onwards, we didn't make an 08, we didn't make a 2012, we haven't made a 2020. Everything else, assuming you've got a decent cellar, and if you've got a few bottles, when they hit 10 or 15 years old, open one up, see where they are, see how that maturation suits your own personal taste. And if you think you'd like to see a bit more time on it, then I don't think you have too many problems at all. Rose got some more questions here.
You won't be able to read my scribble. So how much do you use different techniques when making the various wines? Kathy.
Kathy's question, different techniques between making the single vineyard wines. That's a really good question, Kathy, because the short answer is not much. Apart from the Deja Vu that gets that splash of Sweetwater and goes into older barrels. And we are really quite gentle with that wine through its fermentation, its our cap management, because we want to promote that pretty perfume style. All of the other wines, in terms of the fermentation process, they're all relatively similar. And again, that really demonstrates that there is this diverse stylistic personality between the single vineyard sites. One thing I will say though is that I have over the years honed in on different coopers, the barrel makers, that most suit, in my mind, each of the single vineyard sites. So there's 2 levels of I guess, differences if we did exactly the same thing in the winery. There's two levels of difference at the very least between these wines. A is site and B is oak. So, for example, for Kiss, I might use a cooper called Saint-Martin. For Sweetwater, for a number of years, I've been Syrah because I love those Syrah barrels that, to my mind, tend to promote that lovely perfume, that violet perfume that Sweetwater has. So each single vineyard isn't exclusive to one cooper or vice versa, but I do I do provide the wines with that extra level of stylistic diversity by using different coopers across the range as well. Apart from that, subtle differences through the winemaking process, but essentially much the same. What else have we got? Someone's asked, why not cork?
Yeah, why not cork?
Ian, because cork's a shit. Next question.
How different are the fruit because of the soil in the Barossa? I think the question was. Sorry if I got that wrong, Carl and Michelle, but it was a question about fruit and soil comparisons, Barossa to Hunter.
Oh God, we could go on for hours about that. I mean, it's horses for courses, really. Interesting in the Barossa. When you we made a Semillon from the Barossa last year, and it's from the Light Pass district, which is again the lower lying, sort of right on the Para River, and that's where all those sort of loamy soils are. So that sort of lighter semi-loam soils for whites applies between both the Hunter and the Barossa. The reds are much the same. They're sort of in the darker, heavier soils, sort of as we get into the higher level, the slopes away from the Barossa floor. So similar rule of thumb, if you like. Interestingly, you go to Mclaren Vale, and those of you who we didn't include it tonight, and we didn't include the synergy either because we wanted to focus on the top end. Those of you who know my Two of a Kind Shiraz, which is a blend of Hunter and Mclaren Vale, it kind of reflects where I grew up and where I ended up. The Mclaren Vale Shiraz for that comes from one of my dad's original growers at Blewett Springs. And this is really interesting because that soil out there is so sandy. It's really, really sandy soil over ironstone. And that's potentially what produces some of the best reds in Mclaren Vale. So look, I'm no soil scientist, but it is pretty amazing how in different regions, different varieties thrive on different soils. That's a discussion for another time because it can go forever. Where does the Belford sit? There's a question here from Rowan hasn't put down names, so I can quote you, but Belford sits right in the top end of what we do. We only had 6 spots, so I figured that's actually a members only wine. It sits basically the same price as Dan Block, so 45 less your members discount. That wine is actually fairly close in proximity to the Sweetwater Vineyard, just a bit further up Sweetwater Road. Slightly different soils, slightly darker in its fruit, and certainly slightly in the fuller end of that medium-bodied spectrum. Sorry we didn't do it tonight. I just figured, interesting tonight, we've got quite a number of people of non-members that have come along tonight. So people have bought from us before or visited Cellar Door, and there's even quite a few first-time customers along tonight. It was really pleasing. So I thought it'd be more relevant to focus on the wines that everyone can get their hands on, not just their members. Belford's delicious. There's never much of it, and for those members amongst us that love it, I jump on board because it's getting low. Will we ever see Motel Block again? I'm going to say no. We've picked it a number of times. I haven't picked it for the last couple of years. We picked it a few times. It's a really marginal block. It's that one, those who've been to Sweetwater, it's just across the road, just below where the Hunter Resort is here. It's really marginal. When it's great, but there's years there it's just not even worth picking at all. And some years we pick it and it's just not good enough to bottle as a single vineyard wine. So, it's unbeknownst to a lot of people, it's been in your Synergy Shiraz or your two of a kind Shiraz, the Hunter component of that over the years. I did bottle a Motel Block in 2017. I wasn't on the wine, but Scotty Comans, my 2IC at the time, was on it. He really liked it. My partner Kim, she really liked it, and so they talked me into bottling it. I clean skinned it, and then a couple of years later, I still wasn't convinced of the wine, so I sold the whole parcel off. It's not a bad wine, but I just it just didn't sit right with me. And then in 2018, we picked it again, and right at the death knock, I was thinking about 2019, bottling it as a single vineyard wine, and got cold feet, and it dropped into Synergy, I think. So the short answer is yes, you will see Motel Block again, but maybe not under a Motel Block label. Do you know who asked that question? The Motel Block question.
I'm sorry.
I can guarantee if we ever do pick it again and it looks amazing enough to bottle as a single vineyard wine, you'll be the first to know. Never say never. What am I doing?
The very bottom one.
How was 2022 looking? Ren? Ron. 22 looking good. I know we've got people from all over Australia here. Majority would be from New South Wales, and we've had that weather system come through over the last week. We got about 60 mils here in the Hunter Valley, which from a timing point of view has been pretty good. We had bud burst probably about a week late this year. I'm going to say it was sort of the first, second week of September on Braymore anyway. We've got some beautiful growth happening. We've had little dribs and drabs of rain up until this big dump over the last few days, which is great. It's going to give us some beautiful moisture in the soil profile, and we haven't had any issues with diseases yet. So the crop looks pretty good. It looks kind of average or maybe even slightly above. We'll need to be careful in some of the red vineyards just to make sure we don't have too much fruit there, and always wary about the reds. If the vines want to pump out a lot of fruit, and there's too much there, sometimes they can struggle to get ripe, particularly if the conditions come in a bit cooler or a little bit wet. So look, what are we now? October, middle of October, November, December. We've got 4 months basically 4 months till we pick. So a lot can happen between now and then. It was 2 weeks ahead this time last year. We got absolutely bashed by a hailstorm over the Braymore Vineyard. There's been a few hailstorms around the Hunter Valley. It's just one of those things. It's a bit of a lucky or an unlucky dip as to who actually gets hit with the hail, but it all comes through almost every year. Hopefully it's not us again next year, or this year, I should say. But short answer, so far so good. Let's hope Mother Nature does the right thing by us between now and sort of middle end of January, and we start picking some SEM.
It was Tim Wagon asking about Motel Block.
Oh, it was Tim asking about Motel Block. Tim, I can guarantee, mate, if it ever goes, if we ever get one off that looks, I have like certain standards, and those of you who've had Motel Block remember particularly the 09, which was just like a phenomenal wine, and that was kind of my benchmark, and 2010 was pretty good. And we had a couple of others, but it's got to hit that level for me to consider bottling it as a single vineyard wine again. So if it doesn't make it, it's pretty handy material for the cheaper labels.
People are starting to.
Well, I think unless there's any other pressing questions, most of you, well, certainly the members here, you've got my my email address and my phone number. You always know that if there are any questions, comments, or whatever, just want to chat, you can always give me a call. Those of you who don't, get in touch with Rowena if you need anything. If she can't help you, and most of the time she can, she'll pass it on to me. But for those of you, and I really love to say, obviously we love our members, and it's so great to have those of you members on here again. But it was also really pleasing tonight to see so many people tune in that are new to Thomas Wines, and that's fantastic. If you like the wines, that 6-pack that we've presented here tonight, I know of you actually, a lot of you actually purchased the 750ml bottle sample pack rather than the 60 mils, getting together with a few friends. So good on you. That 6-pack is available on our website, just to make it easy if you want to do that. I can't remember what it is, but it's delivered freight free. For those of you who love the wines, you're not members, you should check out a membership page, because there's all sorts of benefits there. But regardless of that, if you liked any of the wines tonight, you can pop on the website, you can grab that 6-pack. You can grab a 6-pack or a case of anything you like individually. Any orders of 12 bottles, there's a 10% discount and free freight. Go for your life, have some fun. And we'd love to see you back up here in the Hunter real soon. 1st November, apparently Sydney can come back. And we're busting for that to happen. So anyway.
I've just invited people to come and see him tomorrow.
On Sunday. Yeah. So in the meantime, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Ro. Thank you, Mike, who's long gone. A bit of a shame. He's such a great guy. But those of you coming back next week for the LNA vertical, that'll be fun. And hopefully Mike's wine will turn up in time with that one. But yeah, just to finalise, thank you all so much. There was a really good turnout here tonight, and I really appreciate you taking your time on a Friday night for Friday night drinks with Thommo. It must be about dinner time now, so I hope you had enjoyed it. Go and cook something nice up, open a bottle of decent red, and all the best. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye, everyone.